So what were your thoughts prior to arrival?
All right. Well, as you know, I love cats. I go by the name of Cat. I love our cat professor. I love all cats. Big cats, little cats, just cats in general. Hello and welcome to the Worldwide Honeymoon Travel Podcast, the podcast that talks about all things couples travel, including destinations, tips, advice, and more. I'm Kat.
I'm Chris.
And this is episode number 186. And we're home for me, I mean, I'm home for like a week. You're home for a while.
I am so excited to be home for a while.
Yes.
I am an old man at heart, I think.
You're in the get off my lawn phase of life, I think. No.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But yeah, I'm just excited to be home for the cooling down of the weather, going into the holiday season, and also just being able to read a book, sip a cup of tea or coffee in the evenings and just read. And that's all I want out of life, other than traveling.
Okay. Yeah. We like being home. We also love traveling. We spent 2 weeks going to Uganda and Kenya and exploring, which was amazing. Lots of great content. I'm already starting to work on it for the blog, which will be coming out here in October and stuff.
And I don't want to downplay.
That was incredible.
That trip was incredible. I love traveling. I really do. But it's one of those things where I'm home, I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to travel again. And when I'm traveling, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to just have a nice relaxing evening at home.
See, I'm happy to be back home, but after a month or so, I'm antsy and I'm like, oh, I want to get back out on the road again and do something. But we were home for about a week. We got home late Saturday. Last weekend, we had all day Sunday, we had the week, and then Friday we went back down to Kentucky for a family wedding this weekend. And my whole family was in town. I saw most of my family at the wedding. So it was great. Even old teachers that I had, because the bride, who is my cousin, is a teacher now. So, and she works at the elementary school that I went to as a kid. So some of my elementary school teachers were there. It was funny. I ran into both my high school French teacher and my third grade teacher. And I was like, oh my gosh, hi.
Hold on. Where was I during this?
I was with David, our nephew. We were going to go get lemonade. I don't know where you were.
It was probably Miller time.
Probably. But, so yeah, one of my nephews really wanted, they had the fancy little plastic wine glasses and the regular glasses for the lemonade, but you had to go to the wine, the booze stand essentially to get the fancy glasses. And I was like, can I just get a glass of wine, but also an extra little plastic wine glass, because my nephew wants the fancy glass for his lemonade. So we took him there, and then on the way I saw my third grade teacher and then my high school French teacher, and I was like, oh my gosh, hi. And they were like, hi. And you could just tell that they had no recognition on their face. And then I realized I can't even imagine how many students they've seen over the years.
Couple questions about this. Did you tell him or her who you were?
Well, I never ran into my French teacher again, but I did. Mrs. Norris, my third grade teacher, she actually sat down next to my mom because she knew my mom, since my mom used to be a substitute teacher too. And they were chatting, and I sat down, and then she was like, oh my gosh, I recognize you now, because obviously I've changed since I was 8 years old. But talking to my mom, and then mom was kind of introducing us. Everything clicked. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's great, because I felt terrible because I said hi. And then I realized you probably didn't recognize me because I was 8 years old and now I'm in my 30s. So things have changed since then.
Did you talk to your French teacher again? Did you say hello in French or anything?
No.
Did you tell them about France Voyager?
No, I didn't. And I'm so sad I didn't get to run into her because there was so much going on at this wedding. You were there.
Not for any of these conversations.
Oh, well, we were also distracted by the kids. You were also talking to my aunt and uncle too for a bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you were talking to them for a little bit, which I talked to them for a bit, and I don't know. And then I was also chasing after the kids a little bit. So there's a lot just happening in general at the wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. It was kind of reminiscent of my wedding, or our wedding a little bit. My wedding.
Freudian slip, but there you go.
Because all of them came to our wedding.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see all of these people getting catch up, because I haven't seen probably all of my family in one place, or at least my dad's side of the family all in one place since our wedding.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice to actually be on the other side as a guest, where you have a lot more time to speak to, my aunts and uncles, because during our wedding, obviously you're trying to say hi and spend time with every single guest that's at the wedding.
30 seconds tops.
And you get like hardly any time whatsoever with any individual person, because you're trying to spend time with everybody, but you're also trying to dance and have fun and spend time together. And there's it's a lot of moving parts during a wedding day. So, but it was nice to be on this side of it, where we're like, oh, we don't have all these moving parts. We just get to sit and enjoy it, but we actually get to catch up with people we haven't seen in a couple of years.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like, it was great catching up with your aunts and uncles, especially. Yeah,
especially I have an uncle that so he usually doesn't come to the our Weiss family Christmas party that my family has, because it's usually I think it's the way he celebrates it with his side of his wife's side of the family and stuff, so he's almost never there. So it's been literally since my wedding since I've seen him.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, because the others I've seen at the annual family Christmas parties normally.
Old hat.
No, but I've seen them since then, and I haven't seen one of my uncles and aunts in a long time, because they usually are doing they usually never come to that party because they have other family obligations and stuff. But yeah, so it was great. I really had a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I always enjoy going down and chatting with both your immediate family, obviously, as well as your extended family, especially because there's a little bit of Cleveland-Cincinnati sports rivalry.
Oh my gosh, they're diehard Bengal fans.
Bengal, Reds, all of the wrong teams. Mm-hmm. And it was great because we were chatting about baseball specifically. And they were like, yeah, we'll have to get together for a game next year. Well, I guess it'll have to be next year, right? I mean, season's winding down. And I was like, maybe yours is. But I was like, up here in the north, we are gearing up for playoff baseball, good sir. And they were like, oh my gosh.
And they also gave us my aunts and uncles were just like, I'm sorry, you just came home from where? And then they were like, Ma, your parents tell us they're also going to Africa with you next year. And I was like, yeah, they are. So they're always asking questions about our travels and stuff. So it's a lot of fun to get to catch up with them.
It always is. I'm already looking forward to next year and the Weiss family Christmas party.
Yes, because we do every other year Christmas with my family, and every other year Thanksgiving. We rotate out Thanksgiving and Christmas essentially between our parents.
Yeah. I remember the last Weiss family Christmas party. I brought Blackout Stout from Great Lakes, and you made mulled wine. And we were chatting, and I opened a Blackout Stout. A few other people did, and they took a sip, and they were like, "You are nuts." And I was like, "This is a great beer."
Well, I remember my 21st, I think it was it was my 21st birthday area time, that Christmas. My uncles brought moonshine, and they were making me do drink moonshine, because I don't know, I was basically getting hazed by my uncles, because they're like, you're 21, you're yeah.
Did you have moonshine at the wedding?
No.
I did.
Did you? Where?
At the bar.
I'm sorry, that was an option?
Yeah.
I saw Natalie take a swig of it at one point, my cousin who was getting married.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I thought it was just I thought it was red wine or a selection of different beers. And I think that was the only thing offered, wasn't it?
Not
or
to me.
Moonshine. Or did someone just slip you a flask under the bar?
No. I was on the Miller train for the majority of the evening.
Okay.
But I did make a stop at the Moonshine Junction there. It was a good time. Good time.
Oh my goodness.
The only thing missing was my Stetson, but
I know, and so Christopher was so upset that I wouldn't let him bring the Stetson.
I looked like an idiot.
My dad wore a bolo tie.
Looked amazing.
Mind you, so it was an outdoor wedding. We're in the country in Kentucky, and the reception was in a renovated, beautiful barn venue setting.
He also wore cowboy boots.
He did wear cowboy boots.
He looked really good.
And he committed, because he brought a backup pair, because the second he put them on, he was like, ooh, they're a little tight. But he committed to the look.
He looked so good.
And you were like, dang it, he's wearing a bolo tie and you won't let me wear my Stetson? I know. And Mom was like, you should have. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, there's always next wedding. Now you owe me a wedding to wear the Stetson at.
Okay. Mike and Christine's next month.
Done.
Well, the wedding you're in.
Done. What was your highlight from this past week?
My highlight was definitely the wedding. Yeah. And then it was also exciting to pick up Professor because we haven't seen him in 3 weeks since he's been at his vacation home, aka your parents' house. And
the resort, his favorite place.
And then that was fun to pick him up. And then today we had to take him to the vet because he got a little infection in his paw and he was limping, and poor little guy. But he's better now. So he's on the mend and he didn't have to get a cone of shame or anything like that. So that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
My highlight, and I'm glad that you didn't mention it, was our 4th year wedding anniversary. So, you know what? This has been a wonderful journey in marriage with you, Catherine. I grow closer to you each day.
Oh, stop it. That's a highlight too. We had a lot of fun.
And
it's been a good run for 4 years.
And it was just a wonderful time. So I'm glad that our marriage could also sneak through, not even to an honorable mention, which you're very famous for on this podcast.
Okay.
But yeah, that was my highlight.
No, that is my highlight too.
You can't have 3 highlights. Let's go into the episode. I can have
3 highlights. I'm sorry. They're all amazing.
Let's go into the episode.
Okay, stop it. Christopher, I had recency bias. We just came home. We just picked up Professor.
You are not digging yourself out of this hole. But
we had a great evening.
You mentioned that we recently got home from a trip to Uganda and Kenya. Despite the fact that I am an old soul and I like curling up under a blanket and reading a book and shaking my fist that the classics are now being banned and are no longer relevant, I also do enjoy travel. Uganda is known as the primate capital of the world, and for good reason, right? Everywhere you turn, whether it's the gorillas or the chimps or the black and white colobus monkey or the baboons or what have you,
or the golden monkeys,
they are well known for primate sightings. But there's more to this beautiful country than just tracking mountain gorillas and chimpanzees, which are 2 of the primary reasons that people will visit Uganda. Queen Elizabeth National Park in western Uganda is definitely worth a stop. And we are going to tell you all about it in today's episode. So, this was your part of the trip,
yes.
Right? I brought in the home runs of mountain gorilla tracking and chimp tracking, but you wanted to break that up with a trip to Queen Elizabeth. So what were your thoughts prior to arrival?
All right. Well, as you know, I love cats. I go by the name of Cat. I love our cat Professor. I love all cats. Big cats, little cats, just cats in general. And because I love cats, when I was doing research on things to do in Uganda, because you had only told me that you wanted to see the gorillas and the chimps, and that's it. And gorilla trekking takes about a day. Chimp trekking is about a half day. And I was like, if it's going to take us a full 24 hours plus to get to East Africa and back, we better make this worth our while and spend a bit more time. So we did, and that's why I was doing some research of other places to visit in Uganda. Murchison Falls is a place we didn't get to go to. Maybe save that for later. But I was doing research and saw that the tree climbing lions are a big highlight to Queen Elizabeth National Park. I also noticed that it's kind of in that area of the country that we were going to be visiting. So why not add that to our itinerary and spend a couple of days exploring Queen Elizabeth National Park to find the tree climbing lions? So my thoughts prior, again, tree climbing lions, the more research I did, I learned about the hippos, and then it's just a great place to go game driving in Uganda. What are your thoughts prior?
Yep. I mean, you're part of the trip, so not too much research on my part. I was ready for tree climbing lions and hippos. Those are the words that I wrote down.
And that's it, folks.
And that's it. But specifically, I will say hippos, right? Like you talked a lot about tree climbing lions, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the hippos were something that I really, really was kind of looking forward to potentially seeing. We saw hippos in Kruger National Park in South Africa, but we only ever saw their nostrils, eyes, and ears because they were always underwater.
And we heard them grunting at night, running around.
Yes. I just wanted to see those things in all of their glory. And Queen Elizabeth did not disappoint. First impressions of Queen Elizabeth National Park.
My first impression is that it wasn't that far from Bwindi, because even getting picked up for Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, our guide was like, hey, I saw some tree climbing lions or heard about them today in Queen Elizabeth. Do you want to pop over there real quick? It'll add like 10 extra minutes to our drive.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, yeah, let's go. So we went, we saw some tree climbing lions in the distance, and then we went to Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, and I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad we're coming back here later. So it's not that far. Which makes it great if you want to combine something else. If you don't want to just do gorilla trekking and that's it in Uganda, and you want to do something else that's close by, it's convenient, great. We flew into the same airstrip for it. So it's a great place to go see the tree climbing lions, go on a game drive and safari, as well as, and during that time also get to see the mountain gorillas. So not too far. There's almost nobody else there. I mean, we went to the Masai Mara later in the trip where we would see multiple cars kind of surrounding various animals. That is not going to happen here because there's hardly anyone else in this park. It is pretty remote. There are not tons and tons of lodges. In fact, there are very few lodges in the park itself and only one in the Ashasha sector, which is where we stayed. Yeah, and it's just a vast, picturesque safari location. When you think of like an African savanna, this is what you're going to picture. It is very vast and open. So not like South Africa where it was pretty hilly in some places. So lots of great game viewing. You'll see a lot of animals in just like a small amount of land. And then you can also see for miles and miles and see tons of animals. But also note that it is a bring your own guide situation. So you book your lodge, but then you have a driver and a guide that you book, which is a great thing that we booked through Go to Africa, which was the company that we went through. They arranged all of that for us so that we would have our own guide and driver, because it's not like most game lodges where you stay there and they offer their own guides and things like that. What were your first impressions?
Those were a lot of first impressions. You were a sponge when we landed, and we're just soaking it up.
Just soaking it all in.
My first impressions, again, was the stark contrast to South Africa. This is a vast open savanna, which was awesome because we would be driving by and we would see game in the foreground, and then we would say, "Hey, there's it looks like there's larger animals moving in the distance." And it would require the binoculars, but it would be like, oh yeah, that's a herd of elephants, right? So you could see pretty far, which made game drives nice because you knew where animals were. So it may take you a little bit, but you could get there. The other thing I wrote down was that there were close to no vehicles on any given game drive. There were a few on our way in just because it was more of, it wasn't necessarily like a game drive road. It was more of a commerce road. There were people going through that weren't necessarily entering the park. But once you were in the park, close to no vehicles. A rather private experience, which was nice. All right. Let's talk about the details. Getting there, where to stay, when to go.
All the fun logistics. So getting there, you can drive from Entebbe or have a person drive you there from Entebbe. Probably take most of the day to get there, especially as a lot of the roads as you get close to this park are mostly dirt. I actually recommend just booking a flight. So if you want to go to the Ashasha sector of the park, the more southern part, flying into Kahihi airstrip. And then if you want to do more of the Kazinga Channel, northern part of the park, Kasese is a better airport and more accessible airport for that. Your guide typically drives you around, so the person that picks you up at the airport is going to be your guide the entire time. Again, I recommend either booking that in advance. I just recommend overall just booking through a safari company like Go to Africa, where they will arrange all of this for you. That makes it so much easier. They pay the park fees and do all of that stuff for you. Where to stay? Well, if you're going to stay in the Ashasha part, which we recommend, that's where we stayed, that is the Ashasha Wilderness Camp. That is the only camp inside of the Ashasha sector of the park. The rest of them are just outside. So if you don't want to stay there, that's fine. You can stay just outside the park as well, but I highly recommend it. We were right on the river. There was a little hippo that lives in that area. We saw buffalo in that area, monkeys, just all sorts of things just at our camp. You have these fun little tents, so it's like a permanent tent situation where you get to take a fun bush shower, where you basically call the front desk or tell them, hey, I'd like to take a shower at this time. They heat up water and they use a pulley system to give you warm water to have a nice warm shower. But the tents did have running water and toilets and all that stuff. It is like a glamping experience. I will just say that about half of the tent is just screen to the outside, the top half, and then the bottom half is like the canvas material. And then you have your roof and all of that stuff, obviously. So pretty large tents. I would say there was a desk and our bed and, the bathroom and all of that stuff. So very spacious and lovely with views directly of the river. It was absolutely stunning. And you'll hear lots of wildlife at night and things like that. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed that lodge. Our stay included, we had our food and drinks and all that stuff covered when we booked through Go to Africa. So yeah, great place. Loved it. And then when to go, January through February is a good time for dry season, and also June through September is a dry season. We were there at the very end of September, so we started heading into the rainy season part. Or no, wait, we were there at the very end of August. Sorry, I'm like, it's not even the end. Okay.
It was raining though. You were right.
But because of global warming, things have changed a little bit. So we were there at the end of August / beginning of September, and it did rain. It wasn't like an all day, all the time sort of thing, but we definitely got rain all night the first night. And I think it rained a little bit the second day. So it's definitely raining again by the time you reach August. So maybe June, July, if you really want dry season. And then August and September is kind of like a halfway in between transition season. So that's when to go. If you are here for birding specifically, March through May is better known for birds. So if you want to come bird watching, that's a good time to go. So that's getting there, where to stay, and when to go. Let's talk about things to do in Queen Elizabeth National Park.
Yeah, the entire reason you are going here. So the first thing is game drives, right? You are here to go on safari. And you can see a lot of wildlife in Queen Elizabeth National Park. Elephant, buffalo, leopard, lion, hippo, cob, which is an antelope species, topi, antelope species, bushbuck, hold on, and antelope species, the giant forest hog, which we never saw, but is apparently just like abundantly common within the park. Maybe not in the Ashasha sector, which is where we stayed, but yeah, I mean, nothing like a good forest pig. And then primates as well. I mean, Uganda is the primate capital of the world. Baboons, monkeys, chimpanzees, depending upon where you were at in Queen Elizabeth National Park, as well as those pesky scavenging hyenas are also
I like
here.
Hyenas.
I love hyenas. I actually really do.
I think they're pretty cute.
But importantly, for those keeping track at home, you can see 4 of the big 5 in Queen Elizabeth: elephant, buffalo, leopard, lion. You cannot see rhino. So something to keep in mind if you are looking for the big 5. Also, a few common African safari mammals, right? That are not present here. So you mentioned that we went home this past weekend, talking to some family members, and they were like, "Oh, well, like, where would you recommend going?" I was like, "Well, what do you want to see?" And they were like, "Oh, like the classics, right? Elephant, giraffe, zebra." And I was like, "Well, giraffe, not present in Queen Elizabeth. Zebra, not present in Queen Elizabeth. So there's a few that are also missing, right?" I I forgot to mention warthog. They are there. Wildebeest are not there. So I mean, there's you play bingo on this, right? And some of them are going to pop up and some of them aren't. But you were smiling during the cob and the topi listing.
Yes, because our guide Milton, who is a biologist, right? Like he studied biology, all of that stuff, knows a lot about animals. So nice. Explaining to us all the animals that we saw, their characteristics, lots of great features. And for whatever reason, I could not keep topi and cob. Like, I could not keep track of them. I kept saying the copy, the cobs.
Hold on. The best part of this, though, was that you didn't realize that you were doing it until we got to dinner our first night. And
yes, because our guide would be very nice and would politely correct me, but in like the most subtle way that I would still keep getting it wrong.
Right. He would say, "Oh, there's beautiful African cob," and you would say,
"Oh, look at the cobs."
Yeah,
like,
you would say, "Look at the cobs," or "Look at the copy." I was also
very, very tired. We had an early like drive the next day. I don't know. I was very tired still.
It was so funny because at dinner, like we sat down and I was like, "Are you okay?"
I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm exhausted.
You were like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because poor Milton had to correct you at least 3 separate times on various antelope species because he would be like, 'That is the Ugandan cob,' and you would like turn to me and you'd be like, 'Do you see all the cob?' And he'd be like, "Yeah."
Or the copy?
Right. He'd be like, "Yeah, there are."
Or like the tobes. Like the next day we had a great laugh about it. Like Milton was like, "I barely noticed, but it was pretty funny that you were doing that." And I was like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was really, really tired. I didn't sleep all the night before. And then we drove all the way here and they did all this. And I was like, I'm so sleep deprived right now.
It was really funny. It was really funny. But the point is that you can see 4 of the big 5 and you can also see just a ton of wildlife. I mean, really. And it's...
Well, and stress, like, again, the hippos, lots of them. And the tree climbing lions is part of the big 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are really going to be, and elephant, I would say, are probably going to be your big attractions here.
Yeah. We did see a lot of elephants.
Other activities that you can do during your game drives are a bush breakfast. Mm-hmm. So they will bring all of the equipment out. They will cook you breakfast in the bush. You can also do sundowners, which are whether it's beer or wine or the libation of your choosing. We did not do a sundowner here. We did do one in the Masai Mara, which was probably the coolest beer of my life, because as I'm sipping a beer, there's a herd of zebra, there's a family of giraffe, there are hyenas, there are warthogs, and I'm like, man, like, why do I live where I do? Why do I do what I do?
Well, you can't just live in the middle of the Masai Mara.
I will, you know what? As soon as they open up applications, I will do it. So there's also like some little add-ons to your game drives that you can do. Another very popular activity within Queen Elizabeth National Park is a Hippo Cruise. This is going to occur on the Kazinga Channel, which is known for the highest concentration of hippos worldwide.
Hip, hip. Hooray.
Milton and I also had to suffer through that. But this was really cool. We did not do it, but...
Yeah, because it would have taken away an evening game drive or something, and it would have cost more, and we were just like, man, let's just hang out, because we're going to see hippos in Kenya, too.
It would have also been like 2 to 2.5 hours from the Ishasha sector where we were staying, like a drive. It would have been a whole day thing. $30 per person was the cost for the actual cruise, plus like transportation and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't necessarily like a financial decision for us. It was more of a, we're tired at this point, right? Like,
I'm getting the cobs wrong, the topi wrong.
Yeah.
I can't keep my antelope straight. Like, I'm tired. I'm not taking 5 hours just to get there and back, essentially. Right. If you have more energy or you're staying longer, definitely do it.
Or maybe you're not staying in the Ishasha sector against recommendations. But I mean, that's also a possibility. But yeah, like I said, this is the highest concentration of hippos worldwide. Approximately 2,000 hippos in the Kazinga Channel. So if hippos are your jam, and even if you are staying in the Ashasha sector, which is where we stayed, go for it, right? You do you. That being said, we saw plenty of hippos within the Ashasha sector. So it's up to you. It's something available. It's incredibly popular, probably for good reason, right? The third you mentioned was bird watching. We saw many beautiful birds. I am ashamed to admit that I remember next to none of them. The names for them.
Milton knew every single bird. He was so knowledgeable about all the birds. We also saw, after a rainstorm, vultures. Their wings were spread out, and we were like, oh, I wonder what they're doing. And he was like, they're drying their wings. They were standing in the tree. They're massive, by the way, covering a good chunk of the tree diameter. And they're drying their wings. Drying their wings out.
I will say that this was really fun for eBird. If you guys have, there's two apps that work in conjunction. Merlin is like a bird ID, and then eBird you can track. This was a really fun area for this sort of thing. But bird watching is incredibly popular. I mean, we were talking to Milton extensively about that as well, that a lot of people will come there and they'll be like, yeah, drive by the lion, drive by the elephant, get me to that sparrow in the distance. That's what they're there for, and that is awesome, right? Anything to travel. Number 4 is camping. We visited 2 separate campgrounds, both for hippo sightings. There are areas, and this is wild, right? This is something that I think is so cool. There are areas to set up your tents. In one of the places, there was a shower, and there was a sink, so some plumbing. In the other area, there was none. In both areas, there was a sign with a Cape Buffalo skull on the sign that said, caution, hippos are dangerous. And less than 100 yards away, you would see a huge family of hippos. And I was like, you know what? That would be awesome. And we were talking to our guide. We're like, look, they have what are affectionately called Hippo Highways, right? Where you can see where they kind of part the vegetation and they come up on land and they're feeding and all that. And they do it right around the tents. And he's like, yeah, they're feeding. They're not necessarily terribly interested in the tents, but they are inches from the tents, right? Very easily less than a meter from the tents. I think this would be a pretty wild place to go camping. But yeah.
Don't get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Absolutely not. No.
No.
No. The last thing to do that we have on our list is Kwayambura Gorge, also known as the Valley of the Apes. These are 100 meter high, approximately 300 foot tall rock walls, known for primate spotting, in particular chimps. You want to see chimpanzees within Queen Elizabeth National Park, this is a great way to do so.
And we almost booked this when I was talking to our safari planner about doing that, because I was like, we're going to be here anyway, let's just do it. She recommended more so do Kibale National Park. There's a higher concentration of chimps and more primate species. So that's why she highly recommended going to Kibale. But if you don't have the time and you don't necessarily want to take another flight and go up to Kibale National Park, this is another place that you can also see the chimps.
Yeah. And the article that I was reading in preparation for today's episode was stating that there was one chimp family that was habituated within Queen Elizabeth National Park. Less concentration. Technically, they're there. More of a flip the coin, see your luck sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to the higher concentration. But lots of different activities to do. One of which I did not mention that I partook in one full day was if you have not been on safari before, the typical schedule is wake up, game drive, and then you have the full day, and then an evening game drive, and then dinner, right? So that full day is whether it's relaxation or massage or what have you. This camp was fantastic. they had a whole bunch of reference books about birds and about mammals and about reptiles and all of this sort of thing. It was also very relaxing with the fire pit by the river. Just an incredibly...
We saw the resident hippo that lives across the river from the camp, named Henry is what they call him.
Yeah, an incredibly serene atmosphere. Mm-hmm. When we looked out from our tent, we saw Cape buffalo, we saw baboon, we saw vervet monkey, we saw hippo, we saw elephant.
Yeah,
we
saw a massive elephant by the fire. One like right around sunset or a little after, or a little before sunset, across the river. Huge, massive tusks.
Yes, and
beautiful elephant. Yeah,
I mean, a very great atmosphere to just kind of relax the day away, to make coffee slide right into Nile's special. And there's your day.
Which is a beer, by the way.
Yes. All of that being said, this is the Worldwide Honeymoon travel podcast. Would you say the Queen Elizabeth National Park was a romantic destination, or a destination that you would recommend for honeymooners in the East African region?
Definitely. I mean, I think that if you're going to make a stop between Kibale National Park and Bwindi Impenetrable Forest National Park, it's a fantastic place if you want to go see go on an actual safari and see the savannah, because I think Uganda, I mean, it's known as the Pearl of Africa. Very, very beautiful place. I mean, you can go from Bwindi Impenetrable Forest, which is a tropical rainforest, volcanic sort of area, to the vast plains and savannas, about an hour and a half drive, which is Queen Elizabeth National Park. Take a quick flight, and you're in another tropical rainforest in the mountains in Kibale National Park. And we were just in a small section of Uganda the entire portion of our trip. That is what astounds me. The diversity of the landscapes in Uganda, which is not a huge country to begin with, is just incredible. So I think seeing as much of it as you possibly can. I mean, of course, especially if you're going to go from tropical rainforest to tropical rainforest, why not stop in the savannah and see some lions, see some elephant, things that you're not going to see inside of those tropical rainforests.
But would it be recommended for honeymooners?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that where we stayed at Shasha Wilderness Camp was really lovely. You're not going to have like a long leisurely bath while you're there, but I think sitting next to the fire with a drink at night was very lovely. Our dinners were always wonderful. Our game drives, because you have your own guide, you have your own private game drive, so you get to see what you want to see. You can arrange those sundowners and things like that. Make it very romantic. I think safaris are just romantic overall, because you get to have this very incredible, just bucket list experience together.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. First of all, incredibly romantic. Mm-hmm. Safaris in and of themselves, you are generally out in the bush, and guess what does not make it out in the bush? Wi-Fi. Right? How many times
we had a whole 24 hours where we had no Wi-Fi.
Not only no Wi-Fi, but how many times did the power flicker? Right? Like it was almost out for a good portion, and we were like, this is great.
No, the power, that was more in the Masai Mara, where the power flickered when it was storming.
It also happened in the Masai Mara, but there were times when it flickered.
Oh, and well, it wasn't too bad, but the Wi-Fi was completely out one day.
Correct.
By the way, if you're going to tell parents, I know our parents were a little worried because we didn't text them until the next day saying, hey, sorry, we didn't have Wi-Fi. There's obviously no reception out here. We could not get in touch with you. We're safe. We did that the next day. If you're going, note that there might be some Wi-Fi issues because you're in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes things just happen that way. So just, if you're telling any loved ones at home that might be worried where you're going, let them know it might be a day or two until they hear from you, just because of the Wi-Fi issues.
Yes. But I would also say that it was a very romantic destination. I love the slower pace of safaris. Yes, it's an early morning. Yeah. But man, does it make up for it when you have nothing to do during the day?
Oh my gosh, I took a great nap until I was awoken by needing a bug basket.
So that is why I say it depends on if this is a honeymoon destination, right? So you mentioned the bush showers. You don't have hot water on demand, here. In fact, you showered. I had also ordered a hot shower, which I was very much looking forward to, and then you had to use part of my hot shower to finish up your hot shower.
Yes, because
but that's
you get
okay.
like a little less than 5 minutes to take a hot
3
shower.
Minutes.
3 minutes? Well,
3
no
minutes.
wonder. I would turn off the water too. I still had conditioner in my hair and I ran out of hot water and was like, oh no. And then Christopher was like, all right, well, like hook mine up, you finish rinsing, and then I'll take like the quickest shower of my life.
Unbelievable. But it depends.
Yeah.
Right? It depends on if this is a honeymoon destination for you, because no on-demand hot water, giant insects.
That, I mean, again, you're in a
You're in the
tented
bush.
camp, but it is ground level, and things get in, unfortunately, you know, like spiders, especially, sometimes small reptiles. I think we had a tiny gecko
Yep.
in our tent, and I'm fine with gecko. I'm like, y'all can stay, you're gonna eat the bugs. And I know spiders do that too, but they're just creepy and crawly and they creep me out. And there was one underneath or like over top of me while I was napping in the tent, and Christopher was like, please be careful moving, I'm gonna grab a basket and get this gigantic spider.
Yeah.
So it is sort of that bug cup situation, similar to where we stayed in Costa Rica at Playa Nicuesa Rainforest Lodge, but also very romantic, because I feel like the more, you know, unfortunately, the more you're in touch with nature, the more nature's going to kind of be in touch with you. And so you just kind of have to roll with that. So as long as someone in your party does not mind grabbing a cup and slinging a bug outside, it's going to be fine.
It will.
And
be.
you do sleep with a bug net, which also is helpful.
You do. But, I mean, all that being said, very romantic, because the days are pretty slow-paced. Early mornings, yes. After that, the day is yours, and you can spend it how you wish. What was your favorite moment from Queen Elizabeth?
My favorite moment was seeing the tree climbing lions. So we saw them twice. The first was when we landed in Kahiki, and our guide took us there quickly to see them in the distance before going to Bwindi. But the second time is as we were driving into the park, we drove and they were right there along the road. There was a fig tree right next to the road, and there were 2 one-year-old lions, a male and a female, in the tree. And we spent probably a solid 30 to 45 minutes just watching these lions. And it was so cool. I got so many great photos. It was just neat to watch them.
And I said that we would talk about tree climbing lions later in the episode. The reason why they climb is because they climb the fig trees to get shelter or prevention from the tsetse flies, right? And there's only 2 areas in the world, actually, well, 3, but 2 areas that you can see them and that they're rather prominent. The first being Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda, the second being in southern Tanzania, the third actually being in South Africa.
And you can visit all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
They have started to see lions become habituated or develop the behavior to climb up the trees to get away from the tsetse flies in South Africa. So that's like the third one. But Queen Elizabeth is like by far, like if you want to see lions climbing trees, you're going to go to Queen Elizabeth.
It's one of the easier places to see them.
Yeah.
And they also do it because fig trees are huge. They're massive. They can support their weight because lions are pretty large.
Shade.
Great shade, which is another reason. So, and also great viewpoint. You can see the savannah and you can see your prey and any threats and anything on the horizon. So.
And also they just are obsessed with the scent of fig.
No, I don't think it's anything to do with that.
That's a fourth undiscovered one.
Okay, and everything to do with the shade and the fact that they can actually get up on the tree and it supports their weight.
Yes. My favorite moment was the hippos.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I mentioned, there were 2 campsites, both of which had hippos or dangerous signs. We saw hippos out of the water 2 days in a row, which was awesome. This is a very weird statement to make, but I had forgotten how large hippos were, right? Like I've seen rhinos in the wild. I've seen other like elephants, like large animals in the wild. Hippos are massive. And like, maybe I haven't been to a zoo with a hippo in a while. So like I didn't fully appreciate it. Or maybe it was just that like you see a papa and a mama and a baby hippo like wandering around and you were like, man, those things can run at like, 40 miles per hour. I would be toast. That it's just like a very humbling experience to see the large yet agile hippo out of water. But that was absolutely my favorite moment. I feel as though that any time there is a sighting where we haven't necessarily seen that before, right? Like, this is going to sound we've been very lucky to see like a herd of elephants, or like be in the middle of a herd of elephants or something like that. But we had never seen that before. Hippos being out of water. And especially at that concentration, like multiple hippos out of water, it was really special. Like I was like, man, like that is a moment that I will remember for the rest of my life, because it was a moment that we were able to like share together for the first time, which was really, really neat. So that was my favorite moment of our time in Queen Elizabeth National Park. All of that being said, would you go back?
Would I go back to Queen Elizabeth National Park? I think so, especially the northern section, because I haven't really experienced that. Would I go back to Ishasha? Probably not, because I feel like we drove all the roads in Ishasha. We saw pretty much everything there is to see in Ishasha in that section of Queen Elizabeth National Park. But yes, I think I would go back to Queen Elizabeth National Park and either do, maybe try to find the chimps, or go north and actually do the Kazinga Channel cruise. I think that would be cool to see. I don't necessarily need to go back to Ishasha because we've sort of seen it all.
Sure.
What about you?
This is tough, right? Because like, it was an incredible experience. There's romantic moments, all of this sort of thing. But no, I would not go back to Queen Elizabeth National Park. I think it is, it's very much like some of the U.S. national parks, right? You go, you feel as though you've experienced it, even if you've only seen a little bit of it. But you've gotten a good flavor for it. I will say that the Ishasha Wilderness Camp was easily and by far the best food that we had in Uganda. Right?
Yeah.
Like this was weird because when I was thinking about going back, I was like, oh yeah, in a heartbeat. But I was also thinking I would go and stay at Ishasha Wilderness Camp again in a heartbeat.
Yeah. The food was the best. It was the most flavored. Like all the other lodges, no offense against them, they're fine, but this was like perfectly seasoned food.
Heads and tails above the rest.
Yeah. The others I had to add like other stuff to, like salt and pepper and like all that stuff.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily go back to the location itself, but I would not mind spending a few more days at the lodging. Mm-hmm. So kind of a difficult answer there, but I feel as though Queen Elizabeth National Park is the type of place where you can get a pretty good flavor for it the first time you go. And it's not going to necessarily be like, oh man, like, it's not a country, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not even a huge city. You know what you're going for. If you are going there, you're probably going for tree climbing lions. That's the big draw. No, maybe if we didn't see it, maybe we would say, yeah, let's try it again. But even then, like you said, we saw all of the roads in Ishasha sector. We got a really, really good feeling for it. And I feel as though, like, granted, we're only a couple weeks out from the trip, but I can remember the roads and the sightings and all of that kind of stuff. And I feel as though I got a really, really good sense of feeling for especially the Ishasha sector, but Queen Elizabeth National Park, just in its offerings. So I would not necessarily say that I have to go back. Twist my arm, would I? Absolutely. But it's not necessarily something where I'm like, okay, we need to get back there.
Yeah, I highly recommend it for couples and for honeymooners and people that are going to be in Uganda. But once you've seen it, I think you've kind of seen it, especially the Ishasha sector.
Somewhat of a blessing, though, too, right? Because how many times have we gone to a place and we're like, man, we didn't get to see this. We didn't get to see this. We'd like to go back. It's kind of nice to rack up those destinations where you're like, I feel I've seen it. I feel I've experienced it. That is good.
Well, I feel like that's kind of like our Antwerp episode where we enjoyed it. We really liked it. We highly recommend it. but we felt like we saw it. You know what I mean? Like we felt like we really saw it. So we didn't necessarily feel the need to go back one day. But yeah, overall, highly recommend. We really enjoyed Queen Elizabeth National Park in Uganda. So much fun. Go for the tree climbing lions and the hippos and all the big game or all these big sightings of animals. But let us know your thoughts. Have you guys been? Do you guys want to go to Uganda? Would you like to go to Queen Elizabeth National Park? You can always reach us on Twitter at WWHoneymoon, Instagram at Worldwide Honeymoon, or email kat@worldwidehoneymoon.com. But thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to rate and review our podcast. It takes less than a few minutes and really helps other people find us. Also, if you're enjoying this awesome free information on both the blog and podcast, when you're booking your next trip, head over to worldwidehoneymoon.com/resources and use the links provided. We earn a small commission at no cost to you when you book through these links, and these are all brands and companies we know, love, and use, like Skyscanner for finding the best flight prices, World Nomads for the best travel insurance, TripAdvisor for hotel bookings and reviews, and even Amazon for all of your travel purchases.
Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Wherever you are, wherever you go, remember to make every day a worldwide honeymoon.